episode 2 of the Botcast. That's what we're calling this now, the Botcast. So, so this is our first guest, Taylor Giovannini, and welcome, Taylor.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
No, pleasure to have you. And so we've got myself and Shane on today. If anyone watched the first Botcast, you'll know that we both work at Robot, and we're just trying to find some stuff to do during COVID-19.
You kidless people with nothing to do.
But Taylor is an entrepreneur in Newfoundland, and she's interesting enough, she's in the cannabis industry. So we thought we'd have Taylor on to talk about her journey, and it's so good to have you, Taylor. So Taylor's a mom, which she alluded to there, which I guess you're keeping busy.
Yeah, it's definitely a change of pace for me. I feel like back in mat leave days, but it's good. We're adjusting, and I'm learning all kinds of things from my 4-year-old. He teaches me stuff every day, mostly patience, but we're good. Amazing. We're fine. Everyone's fine. I'm fine.
And you're out in Buren area?
Yeah. Yeah, we're I guess I'll give you a little background about Oceanic. I started this a few years ago now, actually. Well, the inception of it was in 2017. But essentially, we're becoming a licensed producer of medical and recreational cannabis for Health Canada, Newfoundland, all of the above. And we're repurposing an existing fish plant out here in lovely, beautiful Buren. So I uprooted my family from St. John's or Paradise and came back to my roots. I'm from St. Lawrence originally. And yeah, we're living in Buren and we're living the Bay life and loving it.
And how is the Bay life treating you during this whole pandemic?
Bay life is awesome. I search for sea glass every single day on the beach. I explore. There's no one around. I keep my 6-foot distancing, no sweat. No, it's truly, I think it's a blessing almost, that we're out here during this, because there's no real pressure to go anywhere or see anyone that we would know in town or whatnot. So yeah, we're coping well. Outdoors is a good thing for us.
Are there any cases out there? I know here in I don't know what region that is considered to be under.
It's actually under Eastern, but they just came out last week and determined that there was one case in St. Lawrence, actually, where I'm from. There's an elderly in the hospital who contracted it. They're unsure of how he or she contracted it. So they're just they sent I think 20 workers, whether it was nurses and or caregivers, home for isolation. So yeah, they're still, they don't know where it came from. Someone brought the virus to them, which is the scary part, that obviously they didn't know that they were sick.
Yeah, that's a bit weird.
Yeah.
Like only one case, which is nice, I guess, but
yeah, it is. It's a great thing, but it's a mystery. So either a visitor or a healthcare worker brought it to this individual, which they don't know who it was. So that individual is, still carrying the virus, and even if they're not symptomatic, they're probably passing on to other people. So it's a little unnerving.
So is everything shut down where you are then?
Except for the essentials, but yeah. I mean, other than grocery shopping and the essential stuff, there's nothing. I don't know. I don't know what else would be out here. Well, actually, there's a movie theater out here that we go to, and that's shut down. So, yeah. Abel's daycare, my son's daycare, has been shut down since the get-go. So that's been a huge change and challenge, but it has its wonders as well. So it's good.
Yeah, you get to go looking for sea glass every day now.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I just choose to, roll with it and enjoy the time. I mean, when would I have had this time with my son? And it's as much as it's difficult a lot of the times, it's pretty awesome. I mean, you can see right here, this is his foot that we made into a cow. we do fun things.
Lots of ways to keep busy with the son then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to kind of jump back a little bit, Taylor. So you said that you're from St. Lawrence originally, moved into St. John's Paradise kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I guess just kind of walk through that journey a little bit in terms of why I moved into St. John's and then how you got into cannabis and why cannabis, that kind of story.
Well, I'm sure the same story for most Newfoundlanders. I mean, after high school, you go to St. John's or elsewhere for university. So that was just a natural thing. So 17, some people are 18. When I was 17 on my own living, with roommates and in university, which was awesome. It was great.
What did you study?
Business. I jumped around a bunch. I wasn't great at university. I was great at partying, but I made a business out of it, funny enough. I made money on all my parties. So yeah, I guess I am a true entrepreneur. I learned lots.
Good on you.
I mean, St. John's is awesome, and we still have our home in there. We'll be back, and I'll have the Oceanic. My company will have a store, a retail store in there. So, yeah.
Okay, so
she's got a really interesting story about how she got into cannabis. So why don't you give us the background on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, cannabis was never, not that it wasn't on my radar at all. I wasn't necessarily a consumer. I was probably similar to a lot of people. You had smoked a joint in university. It was too much. It was a bad time, and that was it. But it was never something that I was against. It just wasn't for me. But I was surrounded by a lot of people who I loved who enjoyed recreational cannabis, and it was best kind. So then I had the opportunity. My husband's grandfather, we were building our house, and he was just devastated that he couldn't help us when we were actually physically building our house. I figured out why. He was just riddled with arthritis, to the point where he couldn't walk. He couldn't go out the door without some sort of, hardcore painkiller. And I just thought that was ridiculous.
Yeah. So
I started to do my own research about medical cannabis. He showed all the signs of the stigma, no, that's the devil, what's the devil's lettuce? That's, he was staunch Catholic, gave me every excuse in the book. He was an ex-smoker, so he can't smoke with it. So I taught myself how to bake with it. Long story short, I convinced him to take it for a week. Bless you, buddy. And it was one of the most amazing things I've experienced, and I'm sure he experienced in his life. It was one of those aha moments where within a week he could walk without pain, and he didn't need he wasn't stumbling around. He was actually walking. So it was just one of those moments where I was like, holy crap, holy shit, can I curse on this? Where I was like, I want to help more people. There's something more to this. I need to be involved some way, shape, or form. And immediately I was like, I want to go into every long-term care home and give gummy bears to everyone. Everyone's going to be happy and pain-free. Anyway, so it evolved from there. I realized that, all cannabis had to come from a licensed producer from Health Canada. So I started there. Cool. And that's really where Oceanic was born. I realized, the economic benefit of, job creation, all that. And, there's a lot of communities in Newfoundland where they need revitalization. So I started to search for abandoned buildings, came across a bunch, because we do have a bunch here in Newfoundland. And this one kind of stuck out. The town of Burin was now in ownership of, it used to be owned by Highliner Foods. It was a secondary processing fish plant. And it was 63,000 square feet. It was huge. It was state of the art once it closed, which was only in 2012. So, it was fairly new. And ultimately, when I called the town, they were more than willing, more than happy to work with me. So, the support of the community was, and it just all meshed and everything just came together.
Now I know that you, obviously we're friends and we work together. So, I know your story pretty well. And if there's anything that we don't want to talk about too much, you just, pass on the question,
Oh,
I
no,
guess.
that's fine.
But,
So,
one thing I do know is that, so you got in early, which was great. And you've got a good business mind and you're a hustler. But you played with the big boys a little bit in the beginning. And I know that without perhaps dropping any names, but
oh, it's fine.
you had you played with the big boys and you had some investment and whatnot, but then also I guess you got a little bit of a lesson of what it's like to deal with big business in a new industry. And so I don't know if you feel like talking about any of that at all, but I think that's a really interesting story,
Yeah, so it's been a roller coaster, like a full on roller coaster, and yeah, I'd love to share the story. I'm comfortable with it. So right out of the gates, everything was going great. Purchased the building, and I met a bunch of these big people, big names in cannabis. I immediately secured a partnership. That partnership came with expertise and funding for the actual to build out the facility. And as listeners probably aren't really privy to this, but in the beginning of this industry, it was just booming. Everything was getting acquired here and there. Stocks were going crazy. So ultimately, the company that I had partnership with was acquired by the biggest company at the time. And anyways, to say I got played is an understatement, but that's business. And when I say I got played, not the fact of the acquisition, but the miscommunication or the misleading communication of the bigger company communicated that they would still honor the bonding LOI, which wasn't the case at all. As soon as it was acquired, it was completely snatched out of my hands. So it left me with no money, no partner, no experience. So I had to get back up on my horse and find money, find partnership, and find experience. And that's exactly what I did.
And it seemed to me that they sort of dragged you along a little bit too, in saying they dragged you along. And it seemed to me that the tactic there, looking at it from an outside perspective, and again, not knowing anything about it, so you can't sue me, whoever's listening to this. So, like, for what it seemed to me is that you were dragged along in a sense to try and suppress your business here, as being, because you were on track to be probably the first local cannabis company out of the gates, and then this whole situation that happened sort of, it certainly delayed your timeline, and that seemed like a strategic play to me.
Yeah, there was definitely some strategic moves there, and I don't know if I can really get into any, but I'm sure you can think of a few, but ultimately the strategic move was to benefit the bigger guy. And that was a lesson that I had to learn. And honestly, when I look back on it, and I continue to, when I look back on it, that I knew from the get-go, there was something in my gut saying there's something wrong here. And, it's a reminder to always listen to your gut, no matter how good things kind of seem or whatnot. And then also when it all fell apart, as much as there was great sadness and great kind of disappointment, there was also this, believe it or not, this sense of relief, because I truly didn't want where the path was going. So, it was, I live by, and I trust that, fail fast and pivot, find a better solution. And there's no failures. There's only better options, So that's just kind of what got me through, and I just continued to move on.
There's a real tenacity with business that, as a business owner, that you have to have, and that's ultimately why you're a success, and why you will be an even bigger success is because of that tenacity. And I know it well.
Yeah, I put you in your place a few times, don't I? I don't like hearing negative shit. I just say, no, tell me the solution. I don't want to hear it. Just tell me what, okay, we got a problem, fine. Let's deal with it and let's move on.
That's right. And
but,
to take that, in terms of, like I said, when you sort of been dealt a bad hand, or, you get thrown a curveball, that ability to be able to sort of brush it off and keep moving forward, and it's not something that everybody has. So,
well, as we say, weaning and pushing about it is not going to do anything, is it?
Well, you're saying, is it?
No, it's called a Newfoundland saying. You're just from town.
So on that note, how did once all this kind of happened, unfolded, and you to use your words, I guess you pivoted fast, or you failed fast and pivoted. Like, what did that look like? How did you pick yourself back up, and what did that process look like in terms of getting you to where you are now?
It looked like me putting myself in a lot of uncomfortable situations, and it just getting myself out of my comfort zone. I flew myself to Vegas and just started meeting with the other big guys and talking, and started the process all over again. When it all boiled down, I ended up securing a local investor, which makes, does my heart good to know that the investment came from a local good company. And then I also, for the partnership on the cannabis side, it's a company that I just feel so much better about, because they're also family ran. They're publicly traded, but they still own majority of their company, and just their values and everything lines up a lot better with Oceanic and what we're about.
Bit of a blessing in disguise by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
So how are you adapting right now with the COVID-19? Are you still working on the facility? Is that how is that all coming along? How do your timelines look?
Yeah, so I mean, timelines I think are shagged for everyone. I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, it's also, we look at this as a blessing in disguise too, as I know a lot of people don't, but we do. We were at a point of our construction where there was a lot of people working, and we're actually the general contractors for our own project, so which is very rare. And we're only 2 people, and now with my son home, it's very hard to kind of manage everyone. So we took the opportunity to kind of scale back. We laid most people off, which we'll be hiring back soon, and to reevaluate where we're at. We're at finishing work, so 95% of the facility is done. That last 5%, of course, takes the most effort, as everyone knows that. So it's an opportunity for us to look at, okay, what needs to be done, what else needs to be ordered, how do we schedule this properly, who do we hire back to better do this in the most efficient way, safe way for the COVID, because you have to keep the facility under 10 people, or at least social distancing wise. So it's definitely affected us, even our suppliers, our security aspect of the facility. For our key lock system just came in last week. It's a month delayed, but it's all coming together in its time, and we'll get there.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how the whole world is. I mean, for our business as well, we've got many we've got many international clients even, and business is shut down for them. Local clients, the business is shut down for them. Yourself, like you say, I mean, there's things that are affecting your business. So it's definitely, this can't be over soon enough. But as you said, you have to take a look at the positives and try and
right.
make the best out of your time. And that's all you can do.
Yeah, and the way I look at it, and I it's just how I choose to look at things, that we're going to be better off. We'll come out of this stronger. I think everyone will come out of this stronger in some way, shape, or form, as much as they may be damaged in other spots, but they will come out of this stronger. We'll be ahead of the game right now. We're very fortunate that we're in the, pre-production stage. So we're just catching up to where we should be. And the world is kind of on hold. So I feel very happy about that. Is that, okay, well, once we're out of this and we'll be ready to produce, thank God, or thank whoever, that cannabis is deemed essential. It's deemed essential medically, recreationally. All stores are still open in Canada, so
You ever think you would see the day?
Right? I mean, people ask me, how are you getting through this pandemic? Breath work, cannabis, and some wine.
It's certainly, it's wow. It's amazing how much the world can change in 2 years. I mean, 2 years. I mean, this has been, I don't even think it's been
Right.
2 years since it's been legal. So
Yeah.
Just on that note, I mean, in terms of regulations, Taylor, where they started off 2 years ago versus where they are now, what kind of hurdles did you have to overcome regulatory wise, I guess, as
Oh God.
open up shop?
Well, we're still in the mix of it. We're at the final, stage, but with Health Canada, there's a very rigorous, step-by-step process. We're approved in principle, so we're just gearing up to send in our video evidence package. Essentially, everything's approved, so we just need to prove to them, hey, we did exactly what we said we were going to do, and here's the proof. And then that will be it. That will be will be good to start growing. Then after that, once we're licensed to cultivate, sorry, we have to grow to 2 batches, and then prove that our batches pass the Health Canada's test, the third-party testing, and then we'll be able to put our product in the store. On the provincial side, for the recreational, essentially we have to be a licensed producer. So we have to have our license, or our partner, which they are already a licensed producer. So I'll be funneling our partner's product through the Newfoundland supply chain in the coming months, once we're all buttoned up with Newfoundland and Labrador. But yeah, we're super excited to be a supplier and a part of Newfoundland's supply chain.
And what do you think is going to happen with so edibles recently became legal to the marketplace, and so with edibles came drinks. I know that the whole market for that is sort of happening. How do you feel about edibles? How do you feel about I got a couple questions, really. How do you feel about the consumption of edibles and liquid drinks versus, I guess I would say, more so traditional uses of cannabis, and where do you think that part of the market is going?
Well, I guess in short, I think edibles are great. I think the fact that it's in a beverage is awesome. I think that since December, when Cannabis 2.0 came out, you're going into winter, then COVID happened. So I don't think that edibles really had its chance to show where it's going to go. But ultimately, I think the majority of the products will be secondary process products. And the reason being, well, and I'm not condoning or saying, sorry, I'm not saying anything bad against consuming as an inhale or combusting, but eating anything or drinking anything is healthier than ingesting it into your lungs. So there's that. Now, what I will say about edibles that I'm concerned about is the fact that there's little education on it, and that the people but cannabis in general is a new consumer product. So, education has to go along with that. But I guess I'm concerned about people, over consuming and having a bad experience, because that is very common. I've done that. We've all done that in university. We all think that, in order to smoke a joint, you have to finish it. That's not the case, but it's a burning thing. So people just assume that you can't butt it out. So it's the same thing with edibles. Edibles also, it's digested in your liver. So it takes up to, could be 1 to 3 hours for it to actually hit your system. So between that time you get bored or you get impatient, you may consume another one, and then bam, you've taken too much and it's not a good time.
Okay.
You're on a journey. You're in Mars.
Yeah. Total random question. What's your favorite kind of edible to have, Taylor?
Personally, I just make my own. I make, brownies or cookies or whatnot, just because I know my limit, or I know what I'm putting into it.
And to that point, what do you think of the dosage? I know that I think we've got regulated 10 milligrams, and I mean,
Right.
you can go to Amsterdam and you can get 100
Yeah.
milligram muffins, and I think that's to your point of
That's
people
just silly
knowing what to
though.
consume.
100 milligrams. People don't know what milligrams are. I mean,
Yeah.
I look at this from a consumer of not having a whole lot of knowledge about cannabis in general. And, for someone to just say, like, put that in context, 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams, how do you even know your dosage if your limits, if you don't consume? So it's like a beer with 5%. Okay. You only know experience of what a 5% beer does to you if you've drank it a lot. So this is new. So yeah, I think it's great that Canada put it at 10 milligrams. I think that there's problems with that because of, packaging and whatnot, and they can only have 10 milligrams in one package. So, I see the frustration, but ultimately this is about the safety of consumers. So I think 100 milligrams is out to lunch.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing about either drinking or consuming is the fact that it takes longer for it to sort of kick in. So I think what I hear a lot of the time from people when they have the brownies or whatever it is that they have is they'll eat it, they'll wait an hour and a half, and be like, "Geez, I'm not feeling
Right.
anything." They'll eat another one or two more, and then you've got yourself on a
Right.
journey, because then it kicks in, and then it's and I
Right.
think that's one of the bigger issues on the
So until
cannabis side.
technology, sorry to interrupt, until technologies come up with a better way for cannabis to reach your system quicker, the same way it would, if you drink a beer or if you inhale cannabis, it's always going to present that problem. I will say I really like the beverage idea because, when you speak of, social interaction, everyone, you go out, you have a few drinks with your friends. You don't go out to get drunk. You go out to actually enjoy a drink. So what do you do in an awkward situation? You take a drink of something, even if it's not alcohol, it could be water, it could be whatever. So it puts the social aspect into cannabis rather than going in a back alley and smoking a joint. So I really enjoy that fact where you don't have to be hiding it, or you can actually have a social interaction with friends and family, and or play a board game and sip on your cannabis drink. I think
And not
that's
have to worry
great.
about the hangover the next day.
Yeah, well, that's even better. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to that point, is there anything that's happening in the technology that you know about in sort of the drinkables or whatnot? Because having a cannabis drink is one thing, but like, how you can sort of have one or two or three beers, and certainly the buzz or the effect that you get from it, I guess you could say is different from if you had 6 or 8 beers. So
Right.
is it sort of similar in the cannabis industry, or is that something that they're still working on in terms of?
Well, obviously, it's like anything, and exactly to your point. If you have 3 beer, you're going to feel it more than if you have 1 beer.
Yeah.
So it's more or less understanding and knowing your personal dose, which I think it's going to come with time with a new industry.
Yeah.
Like there's definitely your OGs out there who know their limits, but majority of people don't. So it's going to take some time. It's probably going to take some, it's like, going to university for the first time. You definitely pass your limit drinking, and you're like, oh crap, I'm not going to do that. So I feel like this is going to start like a university trend or whatnot with 30-year-olds. Woohoo! Yeehaw, giddy up.
Yeah. Yeah, probably a lot of retirees too.
Right? But it's just going to take time. It's going to take time for you to understand, what cannabis does to your body, and to feel comfortable even with that feeling or that sensation. I often say to people, and it was my blocker, it's like, oh, that paranoia, you never ever want to feel that paranoia. But the paranoia mostly comes from, or from my experience, comes from the foreign feeling of being high. And it's like, oh, does everyone feel this way? But if you just release the actual, how do I say it? Release the fear of that feeling, then you can enjoy the high, and then you don't get the paranoia. So I think once people get comfortable with the actual feeling of being high, they'll be fine.
Absolutely. And it's just one of those things. It's a different feeling. And cannabis is certainly, in terms of creativity, I mean, it's just, I wonder what's going to happen to Canada just as a marketplace in terms of like, and what it'll do to our culture since it's become legal, because cannabis is known for being such a creative drug, I guess, as to describe it, I guess. So the effects of that, I think we're going to see, and I think that is part of it, is that when those feelings start to creep in a little bit, you just gotta go with the flow,
Gotta go with the flow.
Yeah.
So basically, what you're saying, Aaron, is after COVID, there's gonna be a lot of creativity.
Well, listen, like, didn't Isaac Newton, didn't he make calculus or something when he went into, because he went into isolation when they had a plague back when he was around. And so you hear all these stories about people that go in isolation and then come up with brilliant ideas. I can only imagine what's going to happen, especially now that cannabis is legal. I mean, there's definitely going to be some cool science fiction movies or something coming out.
I hope so. Taylor, question on, I guess, the education side. What kind of a role do you think suppliers and retailers should play versus the government as the regulator in terms of educating people on cannabis usage, side effects, that kind of stuff?
Well, I guess it's what I think or what I should do. I'm not going to leave it up to the government to. And maybe I should rephrase that. The government has their role in educating the safety of people. I believe that it's my social responsibility as, as a parent, as a retailer, as a licensed producer, to literally teach cannabis 101 to everyone. And when I say cannabis 101, it could be properly how to inhale, how to roll a proper joint, how to store your stuff safely, how to know your limits, what to do if you maybe go over your limit, how to not panic, those simple things that a lot of people don't think of or are embarrassed to talk about. But I think that is something that Oceanic will definitely do. And, a lot of people, I'm sure, are going to get a few giggles out of it, but that's fine. They'll appreciate it.
Good on you.
Yeah.
They stress in Amsterdam. They stress, and that's something I want to talk about here, is that, like, essentially here in Newfoundland, it's legal, but it's sort of like it's not legal to do in public almost. Like you can't go to any, like for alcohol, which, to be honest with you, I think alcohol has far more effects than what cannabis does. But you can go to a bar with the, you can go to a club and you can have a drink. There's nowhere to do that right now. It's mostly just you do
some water. Also want to have a snack.
Sure, yeah, sure. You go. Myself and Shane can keep busy.
Okay.
And so Taylor come back, and but essentially, you can go to a bar and you can get a drink of a beer or vodka, but there's nowhere to go to get cannabis. There's nowhere to consume it. So that, that's something that's going to be interesting to me, is how that plays out. And,
I mean, it's going to be tough because of just the.
I think we're getting to the end of our limit here, so we'll go through this.
No, we're good. We got snacks. We're good.
Okay,
good.
Good.
Snack number 86 of today. It's only not even 1 o'clock. We're good. Anyways, I think that, the easy way to consume cannabis is through inhalation. And unfortunately, Newfoundland has, temporary banned vaping, which I think I want to talk about vaping a little more, because I think vaping is my number one way to consume for so many reasons. But it would be a good way to do it socially in types of bars and whatnot. But I guess where Newfoundland and Canada has banned smoking, cigarette smokes, we'll say, everywhere, it's going to be very difficult to, have a social atmosphere like that.
It is, and they almost need to have separate rules for it. And I'm hopeful that this will come along. Ultimately, I do agree with what we did with banning cigarette smoking, because cigarettes are so addictive, and they're really bad for you. And so, listen, I'm sure that cannabis, there are effects with smoking as well. The studies that I've seen, it's not as much. It doesn't seem. In fact, I've seen a lot of studies that say it's actually has an opposite effect. It's actually could fight cancer, for example. Whereas you talk about cigarettes that they cause cancer. There's a lot of studies out there that say cannabis does the opposite. But what I think is important about when you go into Amsterdam and you go into those coffee shops that they have, they have snacks, they have those sorts of things that you can get. Same thing in Toronto. You go into Toronto, you can vape, you can do those sorts of things. They have snacks, they have orange juice, they have sugar, because that is, that is a good sort of, it does seem you get too high, you have a chocolate bar, you have a glass of orange juice. It sort of levels you back out again. It's just your blood sugar gets a little low. So those are type of the education things that you don't necessarily learn, especially if the culture of it now is just to sort of buy it and consume at home or consume at a party and those sorts of things. Like, there's an element to being in a facility where you can properly get instructed. So again, if you go to a brewery, they'll teach you about the beer. This is how the beer gets made. They'll take you through the process. They'll take you through everything. And so, I think that they should allow that for cannabis as well, in sort of, educating the public about the industry.
Yeah, so Oceanic, we're planning on, once we open our stores, to have like a cannabis night. So invite the public, once they're allowed in the stores, to learn, just to learn about even the plant. Now that you can even grow at home, how to properly care for your plant, how to cannabis 101, and then that's exactly what we plan to do. I'm sure that the elderly, and we're going to try to focus on a lot of the elderly people, because that's who's going to benefit from a lot of the medical sides of it. Even if they want to or not want to get their medical license, they can still use recreationally. And that's the beauty of cannabis, is that even though it's recreational, you're medically helping your body and healing your body. So yeah,
and that's important. I think that's so important too, and that's the benefit that you get about local companies and some of the smaller companies and individuals like yourself, is that corporations a lot of the time are really focused on profit, and corporations, because of their big buying power and their big influence power, a lot of the time they're able to maybe get more stores, or maybe get more just get an up in the marketplace. But their focus a lot of the time is on how do we keep shareholders happy? How do we create the most profit? Where I know obviously you have to run a business. It has to be, you have to do right by the business. But I know that for you, it's going to be important for you to educate the marketplace.
Yeah.
It's a similar thing between, you go to a craft brewery place versus one of the big brewers. One of the big brewers, they're about maximizing the that balance sheet, that their profitability, instead of the craft breweries. They really want to take you through the process. They it's an art, and I hope that we allow that in the marketplace for cannabis as well, similar to how we've done it in the beer and alcohol industry.
Yeah, I've spoken to a few communities and their town councils and whatnot, and we plan to, or they've asked me to come and speak to the community, have a town hall on cannabis. And that's something that we plan to do as well, because, a lot of what the government's doing a good job. And this, not that I want to say it came on fast and furious, but I think that the realization of when they had to educate came on fast and furious. So a lot of the education is more or less fear that's put out into the public. So, what I want to do is provide knowledge, so you're not fearful, and knowledge is power. So if you know it, one of the biggest things that a lot of parents say was well, what about the children? It's well, how do you teach your children about alcohol? It's an adult thing. So teach your child that this is a recreational item, but it's adults only, and they'll respect it just the same way that they do alcohol. And that's your job as a parent, to do that, to teach them, to educate them. I've known about alcohol since I've been a baby. People, like everyone knows about alcohol because it's normal. So we just need to normalize cannabis and all will be fine.
Well, and I think to that point, when it became legal, I think people thought that society was going to break down. And that hasn't happened. I mean, it's just it's been,
we're good.
Life has been normal. I mean, what's happened is we've taken money off the black market. We've been able to reinvest. You're able you're able to hire people. You're able to contribute to the economy. There's big tax dollars that get paid for that, which fund things like healthcare and hospitals. And God knows Newfoundland here particularly needs as much revenue as we can get. So, it's created a whole new industry, and society hasn't fallen apart. Everything in Canada is fine.
and to add to that, it's regulated. The products that you buy, you know exactly where they come from, and it's Health Canada stamped. It's approved.
Yeah.
You
don't
it's
have to worry about it being laced with anything
anything, even if it's not laced with anything, it could be sat there for months and could be so much mold on it. It's, that's why it's great.
Right. Yeah. Pesticides. Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think anything regulated is going to be the safest way to do recreational substances.
I find that education piece you guys were just chatting about really interesting in the sense of, you kind of hinted at when you're talking about alcohol, it's not fear mongering per se, but it's the negative effects that alcohol can have on you personally, but on your life and other people's lives around you too. Whereas you're absolutely right, there's a bit of an opportunity for not just suppliers, retailers, the sellers, but for the government and regulators to put a bit more of a positive spin on maybe the benefits of cannabis use and how it can be used and why it should be used instead of why it shouldn't be used and where you shouldn't. When you can and should be using it.
Right. And I don't know if positive spin is the right word, but it's because, I mean, the government's not going to put a positive spin on alcohol, but they definitely put a pressure on parents and society to educate your children to make sure that it's people know that it's an adult thing, 19 plus.
And it seems to me that also that cannabis has been, the government to me seems like they're aligning it more with tobacco than maybe they should be. I feel like cannabis is closer on the alcohol side than it is on the tobacco side.
And to speak to that, I hate to even compare cannabis to tobacco or alcohol, but when I do it just so people can grasp an idea because they understand alcohol and they understand cigarettes. But in no way, shape, or form is cannabis alcohol. Cannabis has never, not in the history of the world, killed anybody. So, there's that. Cigarettes, I think they're gross. And sorry. You okay? Anyways, yeah. So I know that it's definitely compared to alcohol a lot, but it's healthier, it's healing, and it's also not going to make you a maniac or sick like alcohol does. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against alcohol because I consume it, but I do understand that it's possibly a poison I'm putting in my body.
You're not going to have withdrawals from smoking pot, I guess. You don't have those same symptoms that you have. Alcoholics will, I think they'll die if they don't get alcohol. And you're not going to have that from cannabis. Now, listen, people get hooked on anything. People get hooked on cannabis. They get hooked on, they get hooked on booze. They get hooked on tobacco. They get hooked on eating junk food. So people will get, but that again, that comes down to responsibility and education. And the great thing is we do have a whole new marketplace that's open, that's creating jobs, tax revenue. That's going to allow the government to have more money to be able to put in education and those sorts of things that they wouldn't have had before. So for me, it was a great move. I don't always like everything that Trudeau does in what he's done, but hey, legalizing cannabis, I can totally get behind.
Taylor, the name Oceanic, where's that come from? What's the story behind that?
When I was when I was thinking of a name, I wanted to honor Newfoundland the best way I could, but yet also have something that the world can recognize. I mean, ocean, everyone can recognize the ocean. And also the meaning behind it to me, you know, when I started Oceanic, I wanted to help and heal as many people as possible. So to me, the ocean is a healing
why
place.
you're not talking to me? Mommy, Mommy, why we're not going to nannies?
We're gonna go to Nanny's in just a few minutes, okay? Okay. Yeah. So.
God love him.
Well, yeah, we'll finish up in the next 5 minutes. So
Okay.
he's been good.
He's been great. He's been great. Yeah. So I guess Oceanic to me, it's just it's known all over the world, no matter what. If you think of the ocean, it is a healing place for me. It brings calmness. You know, even if for meditation, you can put it on. You can listen to the ocean, put you into a meditative state. It's fresh. It's just something that everyone can relate to in a calm and healing way.
And I guess I've got a question that reminds me of what's your dream for Oceanic? I know you're a good dreamer. You're creative.
I'm a dreamer.
Yeah.
And
what's
those
your dream?
dreams. Oh my God.
Don't hold back.
Oh.
Let's hear it.
First and foremost, revitalize this community. I think that's always been just such a passion of mine. And then help as many people on their cannabis journey, whether that was, medically, recreationally, whatever, and get in touch with how they can incorporate cannabis into their life in a healthy and positive way. But ultimately, I want to have Oceanic stores all around the world. I want Oceanic to be an international brand that people, grab to. They're like, oh, I want that because it's something that I know and I trust, and it's beautiful, and it's from Newfoundland. It's from this like rare place in the world. So yeah, that's my dream.
That's a good dream.
Yeah.
I think it's a good spot to clue it up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks so much. And everyone, thanks for joining us on the Botcast.
All right, Abel, you want to come say hi?
No, he'll turn off.
Okay. He's done. Thanks a lot. We'll see you again soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.